A few days ago, Mark Carney finally put a number on the Vancouver condo bailout. $1.45 billion, and Ottawa's covering about 10% of it. And he also said something I didn't expect, that his own government, quote, did a poor job explaining this plan. I'm Nancy, and I work with families and professionals buying and selling homes in Metro Vancouver. Today, we're answering 3 questions. Why are thousands of condos suddenly sitting empty? Why is the government buying them instead of letting the market work? And now that we finally have a number, does it actually settle the bailout debate or just move it? I'll walk you through what Carney said and what it actually means if you're buying or selling a home here. If you want to talk through your specific situation while you're watching this, there's a link in the description to book a free, no pressure call. Now, let's get into it. Before we can understand the announcements, we need to take it back a few years. During the pandemic, interest rates were at historic lows. Investors were buying pre-sale condos at record speed. Developers responded naturally, exactly how you'd expect. They launched thousands of new projects. Then everything changed. Interest rates climbed rapidly, monthly mortgage payments jumped, and investors who would normally buy pre-sales disappeared overnight. But construction doesn't just stop because demand slows. Projects that started years earlier kept getting completed, which brings us to today. Thousands of brand new condos finish construction with far fewer buyers waiting. This isn't because nobody wants to live in Vancouver, it's because supply and demand suddenly got out of sync, and the slowdown of population growth with immigration coming in that's allowed right now. That's an important distinction. Keep it in mind because it matters for everything that comes next. Normally, when there's too much supply, prices adjust until buyers come back. That's how markets usually work. Instead, the federal and BC governments have chosen a different approach. Rather than letting the market absorb these homes naturally, they're proposing to purchase more than 2,200 completed units and convert them into affordable housing. They're also investing up to $3.2 billion to reduce development charges on future multifamily housing, along with another $2.5 billion for transit infrastructure. On paper, that sounds like a major housing initiative, but here's where things get controversial. Whether you call this affordable housing or a bailout depends on one thing: the numbers. And up until recently, we didn't have them. Here's what Carney actually said. The total potential cost is around $1.45 billion. Ottawa is covering roughly 10% of that, and BC covers the rest. The units would be offered to people through a rent-to-own structure aimed at families who can't save for a down payment. It's not a general affordable housing. So that sounds like an answer. Except listen to what he actually said. He used the word potentially multiple times. He said there's, quote, no specific transactions at this stage. That's not a finalized number. It's a ceiling on a plan that still doesn't have a single signed deal behind it. And here's the line that surprised me. Carney admitted his own government, quote, did a poor job explaining this plan in the first place. He also said something worth remembering next time someone calls this a developer bailout is no developer asked for this. He says the idea came from the BC government aimed at the person who'd move in, not the company that built the building. Whether you buy that framing or not, it's worth knowing that he said it. So has this actually settled the bailout debate? Not really. We still don't know the per unit discount. We still don't know which specific buildings. We still don't know the full eligibility rules for who qualifies for this rent to own. We just know the ceiling on the bill, and that the Prime Minister himself admits the explanation so far hasn't been good enough. A housing analyst of Edge Realty believes this primarily helps developers and lenders reduce exposure to unsold inventory. He's pointed to Bank of Canada data showing major bank lending to developers jumped from roughly $20 billion in 2020 to over $75 billion in 2025, and argues banks would rather not disclose major impairments on those loans. A government buyout makes that problem quietly disappear. He also pointed to close ties between the current government and BC's development industry, naming federal housing minister Gregor Robertson specifically, the former mayor of Vancouver. He wasn't alone. New Westminster's mayor made a similar point when reporters raised the same question. On the other side, others argue government interventions is necessary because housing constructions has slowed dramatically and affordability remains one of the biggest challenges in Canada. So both arguments have merit. But even with a dollar figure on the table now, neither side can fully claim victory until we see an actual signed deal. So I'm curious where you land on this one. What do you think about what the government presented so far? Drop it in the comments. Here's something most coverage of the story didn't mention. Ontario announced a remarkably similar program earlier this year, but there was one important difference. Ontario explained how rents would be set, who would qualify, how long affordability would be protected, and how the program would actually operate. 550 of those units got capped rents, locked in through legal title agreements on day one of the announcement. British Columbia hasn't released those details yet. That doesn't mean necessarily it's a bad program, but it does make it impossible to properly evaluate today, which is why even local mayors who theoretically benefit from this announcement are saying they need more information before they can judge it. Now, here's a part that actually matters to you, whether you're buying, selling, or just watching from the sidelines. If this is a kind of breakdown you actually want, not just headlines, but what's underneath them, hit the like button. It tells YouTube to put this in front of more people who find it useful. Now let's answer the question most homeowners really care about. Does this affect the value of your home? For most detached homeowners, probably not. And here's why. One of the biggest mistakes people make is thinking Metro Vancouver is one housing market. It isn't. Right now, we're seeing very different conditions depending on the type of property. The biggest oversupply is concentrated in newly completed, investor-focused condos. Detached family homes in established neighborhoods operate in completely different supply and demand environment. I want to make that real with two quick stories from the same week. The first, a couple I worked with upsizing for their second kid, pre-approved and ready to move, but nervous because every headline made them feel like they were buying at the wrong time. Once they understood government isn't buying detached homes, they're just absorbing excess inventory in one specific part of the market. What changed wasn't their excitement, it was their patience. They started seeing real negotiating room instead of a reason to panic. The second, a woman who'd owned her home in Dunbar for almost 20 years, ready to downsize. Her first text to me after this announcement was, "Does this mean my house is worth less?" Once we walked through it, the real risk to her sale wasn't this headline at all. It was a half-renovated kitchen and a listing price anchored to what her neighbor got 3 years ago. The news cycle stopped mattering to her outcome the moment we fixed what was actually in her control. So understanding that difference changes the way you should read every headline about housing. Instead of asking, is the housing market crashing? Ask, which housing market are they even talking about? That's a much better question. If you're buying or selling right now, tell me which one in the comments and whether a headline like this actually changed your plans at all. I'm always curious how this lands for real people, not just in theory. Here's what I'd actually keep an eye on. Whether you're buying, selling, or just paying attention as a taxpayer, $1.45 billion is a ceiling, not a signed deal. Watch for the actual per unit discount once a real transaction happens, and watch for the full eligibility rules on this rent-to-own structure. The same level of detail Ontario already published for its version for this program. If BC's real numbers come back disciplined and well-targeted, this becomes a real housing tool. If they creep towards that $1.45 billion ceiling with a shallow discount, the bailout label sticks fairly. That's the kind of detail that shows up in my market updates before it shows up in most coverage, which is exactly why I do these videos for you. Here's the one thing I actually want you to walk away with. This entire story, the bailout debate, the bank exposure, the rent-to-own structure, we're still waiting to see in full, comes down to one narrow specific oversupply problem in small investor-owned condos. It is not a referendum on the value of your detached home. and it's not a reason to delay buying or selling one. The government finally gave us a ceiling number, but not a signed deal. So that gap is worth watching, but it's not a reason to change your plans. This program is going to get real details as actual transactions happen. When it does, I'll break those down too. So if you've been watching from the sidelines, wondering whether to make a move, buying or selling, this announcement isn't the reason to wait. The leverage in this market is real, and understanding it is worth more than reacting to the headlines. If you want to talk through your specific situation, the link's in the description. No pressure, just an honest conversation to help you. And if you want this kind of breakdown in your feed every time something actually moves the market, that's what subscribing does here. I'd love to have you stick around for the next video. Thank you for spending this time with me today. I'll see you in the next one.